And as indicated before, you said that there was some medical intervention that was done. In looking at States 10, can you please explain what was done or what was present on the body of James Thomas McGrath?
He was received with a breathing tube in his airway, as well as two catheters, intravenous type catheters actually in the bone on both lower legs.
And is that what is referred to as therapeutic interventions on States 10?
Correct.
Again, referring to States 10, under where it says injuries external and internal, what evidence of injury was present on the body?
So there was evidence of both sharp injury and blunt injury. So sharp injuries are injuries that are caused by sharp objects like a knife, a piece of glass, and you can either have a stab injury or a cut injury. The difference is that stab wounds are deeper into the body than they are long on the skin, while like a cut or an incised wound is longer on the skin than it is deep in the body. Blunt injuries are different types of injuries. Those are injuries caused by blunt force, where a person may fall down and bruise their knee or what have you. We call those contusions. So he had some bruises as well on different parts of his body that were just very superficial.
So in addition to those superficial bruising you had indicated, was there also a stab wound found on the body of James Thomas McGrath?
Yes.
And where was that stab wound located?
The stab wound was on the left chest, below the left nipple.
Can you either read or explain the directions? Within the exhibit, it indicates the directions are stated with reference to the standard anatomical planes with the body measured in the horizontal position. What does that refer to?
So we don't know what position the person was in when they were stabbed. So we always give the directions in the anatomical position, which means standing straight up with your arms at your side. So we all have the same planes of reference. So for example, in this instance, the stab wound was going from the front of his body towards the back of his body, and it was going, from the left of his body towards the right of his body, and then slightly upward in his body.
Referring again to States 10, under injuries, external and internal, the last sentence of that paragraph indicates the injuries were labeled A through C for descriptive purposes only. What is the purpose of that? Explain to the jury.
So there were bruises and there was a stab wound. There's no way for us to tell the sequence, which came first, which came second.
Directing your attention to page 2 and to page 3 of State's Exhibit number 10, under where it says A, stab wound of torso. Can you please read what that paragraph says out loud to the jury?
So a stab wound is centered 21 7/8 of an inch from the top of the head and 5 1/4 inches left of the anterior midline. It's oriented obliquely, which means kind of at an angle, with a sharp edge angled to the upper left and a blunt edge directed down and to the right. It is 1 1/16 of an inch long, slit-like perforation on the surface of the skin without natural skin tension. After penetrating the skin and the muscle, the knife proceeded through the left 6 to 7 intercostal space that's between the ribs and perforated the pericardial sac and the left ventricle of the heart. There was approximately 750 milliliters of clotted blood in the pericardial sac around the heart, and approximately 1.8 liters of liquid and clotted blood in the left pleural cavity, which is the left chest cavity. And then the direction of the penetration is front to back, left to right, and slightly upward. In the estimated depth, that's how deep the stab wound was. The estimated depth of this penetration is approximately 2.5 to 3.5 inches deep.
Directing your attention to page 2 out of 3 of the toxicology report. Do you recall or can you read what the blood alcohol content or BAC of the body of said James Thomas McGrath was?
Yes.
And what was that?
It was 0.2 gram percent or gram per 100 milliliters.
Referring again to States 10, to the very first page of that exhibit where it says final diagnosis. Please read what it says.
Stab wound of torso with perforation of heart, hemothorax, approximately 1.8 liters. That's blood in the chest cavity. And then hemopericardium, that's blood in the pericardial sac, approximately 75 milliliters. And then superficial blunt impact injuries of the trunk and the extremities, the bruises.
Based upon your review of the postmortem examination of James Thomas McGrath, what was the cause of death in this case, Dr. Gill?
The stab wound of the torso.
And what was the manner of death?
Homicide.
And if you could please explain your reasoning to the jury as to why it was a homicide.
Homicide for a medical examiner is death at the hand of another person.
Homicide, a medical term there. It's the jurors who have to determine the legal term, whether or not this was self-defense or murder. Let's get to a break. When we come back, we'll have the medical examiner's cross-examination plus the lead investigator on the stand on direct.
Coming soon to Court TV.
It's the biggest story that we're covering.
These murders have shaken our community.
He is the boogeyman.
So many eyes have been on Donna Adelson from the beginning. It's terrible.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
Why do you have something against me?
She wrote a children's book about her husband's death. Now she's accused of killing him.
The high-stakes trials you don't want to miss. Coming soon, only on Court TV.
Welcome to Court TV Live. We are following a case out of Connecticut this morning, one involving a prep school party turned deadly. The defendant was a 16-year-old at the time, 20 years old now, and he was charged as an adult with murder. He claims that it was self-defense. Raul Valle stabbed to death a victim, James McGrath, who was 17 years old. And we're learning more about this victim's death through the autopsy. Dr. James Gill, the medical examiner, is here on cross-examination. Let's go in.
You told us that you have been at the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner since July of 2013?
Correct.
Did you take over from Dr. Carver?
Yes.
And you've been there since for the past 12 years?
Yes.
Any break in that time period? You've served continuously?
Correct.
All right. And you've told us that in conducting your autopsy, you discovered a 1 1/16 inch long slit-like perforation in the chest, correct?
Yes.
And you've described that both in your testimony and in the report as being the result of a knife, correct?
Yes.
And was that based on information that you had from other people involved with this investigation?
I think it's probably a combination. The features, the anatomical features, are what we see with a knife injury, and I believe we had history that he had been stabbed.
And so did you come to that conclusion that it was a knife based on your own observations or based on something you had been told?
Again, I think it was a combination. The features are kind of classic findings for a knife. I really couldn't think of much else that would cause it.
No other sort of sharp object like a piece of glass or something of that nature?
A piece of glass wouldn't cause such a straight injury with a single blunt angle and a sharpened angle, and to that depth, I think it'd be very unlikely that a piece of glass would do that.
Any other tool, perhaps? A screwdriver or something like that?
A screwdriver gives a different type of pattern, a more circular puncture type injury.
Fair to say you didn't have anything definitive at that point that led you to know that this was a knife, but that's what you concluded based on what you've described here to us?
Yeah, the anatomic findings are supportive, very supportive of a knife, yeah.
And you also had information, I guess, from the police officers that were involved, or where did the mention of a knife come from?
Probably from the hospital that he presented with a stab wound.
And you described that this stab wound went through the left 6 to 7 intercostal space, correct?
Yes.
And you described that as being the space between the ribs?
Correct.
And as you went through and gave us a list of your findings, you described also an injury under Section B, which was an old bruise. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And then under Section C, a number of other scattered bruises of indeterminate age. Is that also fair to say?
Correct.
Now, as part of your report, you said that the wound itself was an estimated 2.5 to 3.5 inches deep, correct?
Yes.
And why is that an estimated number?
Because the heart and the body can move. And so if a person's leaning forward or laying back, there can be some movement of the heart. And so we can't give an exact, precise depth. Plus, if it goes into the heart cavity, we don't know how deeply it went into the cavity. It didn't go through the heart, through the whole heart, but it went through the wall. So we give an estimate. That's typical.
So based on a position, the person's body position when the wound is suffered, fair to say the stab wound could have been 2.5 inches deep, could have been 3.5 inches deep.
It's within that range, correct?
You didn't note any other fractures, correct?
Correct.
You didn't note any other puncture wounds, correct?
Correct.
So this single stab wound that you've described to us, in your opinion, was both the only wound and the wound that led to his death?
It is the only fatal injury, yes.
Other than what you've described as being old, unrelated bruises of indeterminate nature, is that fair to say?
The bruising, yeah, that played no role in his death.
You also told us that you had ordered what was your standard specimen testing for toxicology reports, correct?
Yes.
And that included a toxicology for alcohol, correct?
Correct.
And did you tell us that the blood alcohol of the deceased was a 0.2?
Correct.
Did that have any bearing on your findings in this case?
It played no physiologic role in his death. He would have died from this stab injury whether or not he had alcohol in his system.
And Dr. Gill, you've been called here today to tell us what you witnessed and observed as it relates to this autopsy, correct?
Yes.
And you've done that to the best of your ability?
Yes.
But if this jury is interested in knowing why Mr. Valle did what he did that night, you can't tell us anything that would help them, can you?
No.
The defense here at the end of this cross-examination highlighting two things. One, that there was a blood alcohol level in the body of the victim, and as he has done with several of these witnesses, that they cannot speak to the why of this case. It's not who did it, it's why, whether or not this defendant feared for his life. Let's bring in civil rights attorney, trial attorney as well. Adante Pointer is with us. Adante, talk about what you think could be the outcome in this case. We have a defendant who has turned down a plea deal of 40 years. He's 20 years old. Are you surprised that twice he turned down a plea deal?
Well, you know, for a 20-year-old to be facing a 40-year prison sentence is something pretty awesome for anybody to wrap their mind around, especially a 20-year-old. So I'm not terribly surprised that the proposal of accepting 40 years for the next year of life being in prison is something that he would turn down. I would also think that confidence in turning down the plea deal must also be rooted in the idea that he believes that a jury can and will believe his defense in terms of saying that he only did what he did because he was defending himself. So I think that's pretty powerful. We'll see how it actually plays out. It may be a smart move, or it may be something that he lives to regret for a long, long time, laying on a prison bunk.
We're about to listen to the lead investigator together, Adante. What should we be listening for? And does the number of victims also impact this? Because we have 4 victims in total. 1 died from those injuries. I mean, this was quite the scene.
Absolutely, the number of victims factor in to what's going on, how the jury will perceive what happened, as well as what deal he's offered. You know, in light of the fact that someone did pass away and there's other victims, you know, you could quickly get to a 40-year sentence, which is actually probably a reduced sentence. He could easily be facing a life sentence for what happened. So there is some mercy, if you will, in a 40-year proposal. But like I said, to be 20 years old, accepting 40 years as what you're going to be doing for the next, 4 decades of your life is something pretty hard for a 20-year-old to wrap their mind around.
Absolutely.